the tangle that women seem to find themselves in when getting involved with a man or relationship or...
Toshi was the quiet mystic. He was the rising star. Together, they embodied what fans believed was true love, until it all came crashing down. But this isn't just another Hollywood breakup. This is the secret Lisa Bonet kept for years during her marriage to Jason Momoa. A secret so damaging, it shattered the illusion of the perfect couple and revealed something far darker beneath the surface. And once you learn what it was, you'll understand why this isn't just sad, it's bad. An illusion of harmony. Lisa Bonet and Jason Momoa were once the embodiment of a fairy tale romance. Fiercely private, yet undeniably magnetic to the public, they seemed like the perfect pair, balancing creativity with compassion, passion with peace. Jason, with his towering presence and rugged charm, complemented Lisa's ethereal, introspective nature. Together, they were seen as the living proof that two different worlds, one of celebrity and the other of reclusive artistry, could merge into something transcendent. Their love story appeared to embody a seamless blend of spiritual enlightenment and Hollywood allure. But beneath the surface, cracks had begun to form long before they were visible to the outside world. The couple, so in tune with each other, had begun living in different emotional realms. Lisa, always introspective and deeply connected to her roots, found herself caught between her desire for privacy and the relentless intrusion of the fame that came with Jason's skyrocketing career. Lisa had long been the mysterious, almost enigmatic counterpart to Jason's larger-than-life persona. Yet, as the years wore on, she began to feel the weight of the public's gaze. And it wasn't just the flashing cameras that troubled her. It was the burden of suppressing a truth so intimate, so personal, that she couldn't bring herself to voice it. Jason's adoring fans and their collective obsession with their relationship only added to the growing emotional chasm. The truth, however, would eventually emerge, exposing the deeply ingrained issues that had festered in their seemingly perfect union. The cost of fame and freedom. As Jason's career exploded, so too did the demands of his newfound stardom. He was thrust into a world of red carpets, magazine covers, and high-profile premieres, all of which promised more power, more recognition, and more prestige. But with every accolade, Jason found himself further distanced from the world Lisa had created with her own hands. The constant media attention on his career meant that every moment he spent with co-stars, every seemingly innocent exchange, was scrutinized. Paparazzi captured Jason in multiple cozy press appearances with actresses like Emilia Clarke and Amber Heard. While the photos were likely harmless, Lisa reportedly grew tired of playing the understanding wife role when tabloids used those images to stir gossip. The lines between the professional and personal blurred, and what seemed harmless to him began to erode Lisa's trust in him. For Lisa, fame had always been a double-edged sword. She had stepped away from the Hollywood limelight long before her relationship with Jason, preferring instead to nurture her spiritual growth and focus on her family. The quiet life, the one she cherished, began to feel impossible to maintain. The privacy she once held dear was chipped away by the flashing lights and public attention that came with Jason's rise to superstardom. But what was even more painful than the constant spotlight was the feeling of isolation that accompanied it. While Jason basked in the adulation of millions, Lisa found herself increasingly alone, struggling to reconcile the woman she had once been with the life she was now leading. In the quiet moments of their relationship, when the cameras were turned off and the glitz of fame faded, Lisa began to confront a painful truth. Jason's flirtations with co-stars, his public display of affection toward others, were more than just innocent moments. They were betrayals, not just to their union, but to the very foundation of the trust they had built together. She had always supported Jason's career, encouraging him, championing his success. But as his fame grew, so did her sense of alienation. Behind the smiles and the polished public appearances, the cracks in their relationship were widening, and Lisa found herself living with the quiet anguish of a truth she could not yet admit, even to herself. As the days turned into months, and the months into years, Lisa's secret began to consume her. She was tired of the charade, tired of the lies, tired of feeling invisible in a relationship that was meant to lift her up. She couldn't keep it inside any longer. It was as if the weight of the betrayal had finally become too heavy to carry, and it was only a matter of time before the truth would come to light. The whispered rumors would inevitably lead to arguments, fierce, gut-wrenching fights where emotions ran high and words cut deep. Lisa would find herself in the painful position of confronting Jason about the allegations, each conversation heavy with the weight of unspoken fears and betrayals. In those moments, Jason would apologize, promising change, but the trust that had once anchored their bond began to erode. Lisa would try to forgive, to move forward, but each betrayal left a scar, one that never fully healed. What the public failed to see, and what Lisa struggled to accept, was how isolated she became in this turmoil. She kept the cracks hidden, presenting a united front that masked the inner turmoil. Her sense of self, once full of the artistic freedom and joy that had defined her, began to unravel. In the privacy of her own thoughts, she would question whether the constant pain was worth the facade. Her journal became a safe haven, a place where the truth could bleed out without judgment, where she could say the things she couldn't speak aloud. A pattern of destruction. As the years went on, the pattern grew all too familiar. Scandalous rumors would surface, sparking arguments that felt all too similar to the ones before. Every new betrayal seemed like a repeat of the last, a vicious cycle that never truly stopped. "I felt invisible," Lisa once admitted to a friend. Each betrayal brought with it a new level of destruction. But one betrayal hit harder than most. When Jason had an on-set connection with a co-star during the filming of C in 2019, it made headlines. Lisa brushed it off at the time, but insiders say it planted the first real seed of distrust. As Jason's career soared, their arguments became repetitive. In 2020, after attending the Golden Globes, Lisa had a public outburst when Jason stayed behind to speak to a famous model while they were supposed to head home together. It was a pattern that was hard to ignore. His focus always shifting elsewhere, his charm spent on everyone but her. It wasn't just Jason's actions that hurt Lisa. It was the emotional toll of repeatedly confronting his mistakes, coupled with her own desire to preserve their image. The public pressure added another layer to the weight she already carried. The same betrayal cropped up again and again like clockwork. Later that year, Jason was photographed in Hawaii with his co-star, and despite their smiles, Lisa could feel the tension building. When Jason returned home, Lisa confronted him with what she had seen. The evidence was always blurry, just a touch of too much attention, too much flirtation. He'd apologize, but the damage was done. Lisa watched as the same cycle played out time and time again. The arguments became more frequent, and the reconciliations increasingly hollow. Every time Jason swore things would be different. Every time he promised he would change. Lisa allowed herself to hope, but deep down, she knew that hope was fleeting, that nothing ever truly shifted. The cracks would always reappear. The betrayals would always return. It wasn't long before Lisa realized that she was carrying the weight of the relationship alone. Her love for Jason hadn't vanished. It had transformed into something else, a weary commitment to a relationship that no longer felt like her own. There was no longer the joy in the quiet moments, no longer the spark that once made their connection feel so real. All she could feel was the constant, unrelenting fatigue, the constant cycle of hurt, and the silent question that lingered in her mind: how much longer could she keep pretending? By 2021, Lisa was nowhere to be found during Jason's major career milestones. He took home the Aquaman sequel role, and while fans celebrated, Lisa withdrew even further. An Instagram post captured their last family moment, but it didn't show what was happening behind the smiles. Jason was surrounded by friends, co-stars, and accolades, but Lisa felt like a ghost. In a rare 2022 Interview magazine piece, Lisa reflected on her emotional state, saying, "Learning to be authentically me has been the most painful lesson." It was a rare glimpse into the quiet storm that had brewed beneath her composed exterior. "I was tired of it all," she later said. These words, simple yet all-encompassing, reflected the toll of years spent trying to make a relationship work despite the constant emotional wreckage. In the depths of her exhaustion, Lisa came to a painful realization. No amount of apologies, no amount of promises, could repair the damage that had been done. The emotional cost had been too high, and she was no longer sure if she could continue paying it. And so, the cracks that had been hidden for so long, those signs of a crumbling foundation, finally became impossible to ignore. The moment of resigned clarity as the years dragged on, the cracks in Lisa Bonet and Jason Momoa's relationship deepened beyond repair. What was once a passionate, enviable love story had devolved into a painful struggle for survival. The glamour and the thrill of their early days together had long since faded, replaced by the weight of betrayal and unresolved conflict. Jason's infidelities were not just rumors, they were betrayals that played out in real time, often in front of an audience. Each new accusation, each new whisper, was a reminder of the dissonance between the man she had once adored and the partner who was steadily slipping away. The emotional toll was suffocating. The constant cycle of arguing and forgiving, followed by the promise of change that never materialized, created an inescapable trap. And in the silence of those long, sleepless nights, when the house was still, Lisa faced the reality that their bond could not be saved. The constant tension of living with a secret that was too heavy to share, and a partner too deep in denial to see it. The love had been replaced by a quiet, suffocating resignation. Lisa had reached the point of no return, where hope for healing had dissolved into despair. This realization was not sudden, nor was it dramatic. It was the culmination of years of small wounds, each one making the next harder to bear. In that moment, Lisa knew the foundation of their relationship was irreparably cracked, and any attempt at repair would be futile. By the time their separation was announced in January 2022, the public narrative had been carefully sculpted to portray the dissolution of their marriage as a mutual decision, one born out of the natural evolution of a family in transition. A revolution in the midst of transformation, was how the joint statement put it, framing the end of their relationship as something philosophical and inevitable. Yet those who were close to the couple saw the cracks long before the official announcement. Behind the polished words and composed statements, Lisa had been silently carrying a burden that no one could see. Lisa's secret was never a scandalous affair or a dramatic betrayal. No, it was far more insidious than that. It was the slow, steady erosion of trust that had built up over the years, the weight of knowing that Jason's behavior had already shattered what was once a sacred bond. While the media spotlight remained fixated on their public image, insiders began to whisper that beneath the surface, Lisa had been grieving a loss for much longer than anyone realized. The emotional toll had slowly drained her spirit, and despite her attempts to maintain composure, she was broken. The world never saw the real story, the exhaustion that accompanied the facade of a perfect family. The separation was not a mutual decision arrived at with grace, but rather the inevitable conclusion of a relationship ravaged by emotional neglect and infidelity. Lisa's internal collapse, the quiet unraveling of her hopes for a shared future, was far from the romanticized version the world would later be told. It was a slow, private unraveling, a collapse unnoticed by all but those closest to her, who witnessed her retreat into herself, a shell of the woman who once stood strong beside Jason. In the aftermath, the joint statement was released. It was polite, measured, but inside, Lisa's heart had already broken long before the public announcement. The truth had been buried under layers of silence, and for her, It was not just the end of a marriage, it was the final act of letting go. The weight of everything they had been, everything she had sacrificed, now seemed like a distant memory. But for Lisa, the truth was clear. She had endured enough, and now it was time to finally walk away. Aftermath and shattered illusions. After their separation, Jason Momoa's public life shifted into a new chapter, one dominated by romantic entanglements and attempts at reinventing his public image. The spotlight, which had once radiated solely on his charm and captivating presence, now danced around the peripheral chaos of his personal life. Rumors swirled about new relationships, each one more public than the last, as if he was eager to prove he could move on from the heartbreak with a sense of ease. Yet for those who had watched their relationship crumble from the inside, the true cost of the separation was far more profound than what the headlines conveyed. For those closest to him, the fallout was not merely a breakup, it was the destruction of a family. Jason's seemingly endless cycle of romantic escapades, designed to mask the pain of his failed marriage, could never fill the void left behind. In his pursuit of fame and adoration, he had left behind something far more precious, the trust of the woman who had stood by him for so many years. The disintegration of their bond was a slow, painful process, but its toll was most apparent in the quiet moments far from the public eye. The emotional aftermath was often buried beneath his attempts to perform and present an idealized version of himself to the world. But those who knew him best could see the cracks beneath the facade, cracks formed by betrayal, unspoken hurt, and the slow unraveling of a relationship that was never meant to withstand the weight of such persistent lies. Meanwhile, Lisa Bonet retreated further from the public eye. Unlike Jason, who sought refuge in the spotlight, Lisa found solace in silence, removing herself from the glare of fame. Yet even in her seclusion, she carried the weight of a secret, a painful truth that had been buried deep inside for years. It was a secret she had never fully shared, a secret that mirrored the unraveling of their love. As the world continued to spin and the drama of celebrity life pressed forward, Lisa's silence spoke volumes. Behind her calm demeanor lay the untold story of a woman who had loved with all her heart, only to be worn down by the repeated betrayals that punctuated her relationship. The pain she bore was not just the dissolution of a marriage, but the emotional toll of years spent loving a man who, despite all his fame, had left her feeling invisible and unheard. The true cost of their years together, hidden from the public eye, was a story that could never fully be understood by those who only saw the glitz and glamour. Behind the scenes, there were moments of quiet devastation, each one leaving a scar that could never be fully healed. For Lisa, the separation was not just about a change in her relationship status. It was the culmination of years of personal sacrifice, emotional exhaustion, and a relentless burden of unacknowledged pain. The final reckoning. For years, Lisa had been alone, trapped in a relationship where her presence felt more like an obligation than a connection. Emotionally and spiritually isolated, she had stayed in the marriage because it was what was expected of her, what the public adored. Jason Momoa, with his irresistible charm and towering presence, seemed to have everything the world wanted. Yet behind the curtains, he was a man adrift, his focus drifting away from her, from their shared life, and into the overwhelming demands of his career, his public image, and far too often, his attention wandered elsewhere. Jason wasn't cruel. He wasn't malicious. He didn't leave bruises or raise his voice in anger. But what he did leave was far more damaging, his emotional absence. His mind wandered, his body was often absent, and his affection seemed directed at everything but the woman who had stood by him for so many years. It wasn't a single affair or betrayal that caused the fracture. It was the constant hum of neglect, the way she was ignored and dismissed, the absence of the partner she once had. These flirtations weren't mere lapses in judgment. They were part of an ongoing pattern, one that Lisa quietly endured in silence, absorbing the humiliation in a way that wore down her sense of self-worth. Every magazine cover that called Jason a hero or celebrated his relationships with other women only deepened her silence. Lisa never left because of one explosive moment. No, her departure was the culmination of years of quiet suffering that she kept hidden. There were birthdays where she was alone, family gatherings where she was just the quiet presence behind him, the forgotten partner in a relationship the world viewed as idyllic. Lisa Bonet didn't keep a secret in the traditional sense, but in truth, there was one moment that broke her resolve. And this time, it wasn't a quiet, emotional betrayal. It was a final truth that had been building for years. In late 2021, when Jason appeared at the No Time to Die red carpet event in London without Lisa, rumors erupted. What most didn't know was that just the night before, Lisa had found a series of messages on Jason's phone. They weren't explicit, but they were intimate enough to shatter whatever was left of the trust that had already begun to crumble. There were sexual innuendos and private exchanges with someone Lisa knew, someone from his set cast. It wasn't the first time, but this time it was different. Rumors swirled, but Lisa, with grace and quiet dignity, shielded their reality. She kept it hidden. She protected not just Jason's image, but also the illusion of a harmonious family, for their children, for the world. She allowed herself to be the scapegoat, the silent sufferer, hoping the world would see only what she wanted them to see, and in doing so she gave up her own peace. What Lisa kept hidden is not only about what is going on in her relationship with Jason, but the truth of her daily emotional torment, the knowledge that she was fighting a battle no one else could see. She had long been the one to uphold the emotional weight of the relationship, fighting for something that no longer existed. She gave herself to a partnership that had long since become one-sided. She didn't expose him because she loved him once, and he was the father of her children. She didn't retaliate because she believed in the vows they shared. She didn't speak out because doing so would have shattered the image they had worked so hard to build. She realized with a quiet, undeniable certainty that Jason Momoa was no longer the man she had once built a life with, the man the world continued to celebrate. The one they placed on a pedestal was no longer the person she recognized. And in that quiet realization, she understood something fundamental. She had outgrown him. The reckoning came not with a dramatic bang, but with a whisper of truth, slowly unraveling the fabric of what they had once built. And in the end, it wasn't a secret that tore them apart. It was the truth that Lisa had held in for so long. She had been alone in that marriage, and no amount of loyalty could make up for the emotional absence she had suffered. Lisa Bonet kept this hidden during her marriage with Jason Momoa, and it's bad. What do you think is worse? Betrayal you can prove, or silence that slowly destroys you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video with us, and catch you in the next one.